Hi everybody, it's Melissa here. Finally getting around to starting my cards again. I'm going to do a thank you card for the baby shower. And I'm using the CC Designs Rubber Stamps Baby Burps set. And I just inked that up with the Memento Tuxedo Black ink and stamped that onto some CC Designs Copic Quality 80-pound cardstock. And then I'm going to get to coloring with my Copic markers. And it's a really small image. It's so adorable and so easy to color. There's not a lot of coloring that's actually going to happen. But like usual, I'm going to start with the skin tone. So his little face, and he's got these little tiny, tiny hands. And I'm just laying down a base coat initially of my lightest shade, which is E000. And then once I've got that, I'm going to go back in with E11 and I'm blending that out. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go with the third color, so I blended all that out just to see if I liked it. And then decided that I did want just a little bit more depth in the shading. So once I've got that all blended out, I'm going to pick up my E13. And with the E13, I'm putting down just a very thin line around the base of the hat and kind of the corners of his face, just to make it pop just a little bit more and add just a little bit more dimension. And then I'm going to go back through with my E11 to blend that out, and then finally I'll pick up my E000 and blend that all out as well. The little hands, I only used the E11 and the E13. I didn't do a lot with his little hands because they're so tiny, but it was cute. And then after that, I picked up my R20 and wanted to just add a little bit of color to his cheeks, and then picked up the E000 and blended out that blush color just a little bit more so it's evened out. And then we are having a boy, so of course I had to do blue for the little onesie and his little hat. Started again with just a base coat. I used B00 and didn't make it look pretty, just kind of filled it in. You'll notice I stay away from the lines or the edges of the image when I'm doing this, because when I'm putting down the initial coat of color, I'm not being too specific, and I want to be able to blend everything together. The blending process really fills in the image, so don't worry about it being perfect the first time. But I did go up to the B02 to add my first layer of shading, and then the darkest color that I use on the clothing is the B05. And I usually start from lightest to go to darkest, and then once I've got my kind of base coats down, I'm going to go back in reverse. So after I finished with the B05, I think I said B02 before, but B05 is my darkest. I go back with the B02 and then the B00 just to finish it off and complete the last bit of shading on his little clothing. And I did the exact same thing with his little hat. Started again with the B00, went up to the B02, and then added that last little depth and dimension with the B05, and then work backwards yet again and just blend everything together. The easier that your Copic coloring comes, you'll be able to add more colors. But I tend to stick to 2 or 3 unless I'm doing a really in-depth image. So you'll notice in a lot of my coloring that I kind of stick to 2 or 3 colors when I'm doing my blending. Once I got the hat all put together, I had just a couple more things left to do on the image. I picked up a C1 marker and used that on the pacifier, just blended that out with my colorless blender, and then did the same thing to kind of ground the image. I didn't want him looking like he was just kind of flying through space, so added a little bit of ground with the same C1 marker, and then blended that back out with the colorless blender so that it just looks like he's sitting on something. And that's pretty much it for the image. And then moving on to the front of the card, I'm using the Cartabella Rough Tumble paper pack, and I had kind of a general idea of the layout I wanted to use, so I already had some papers cut out. And you'll notice in this card I'm going to use a lot of just attaching it flat to the card. I usually use pop-ups when I attach my images, but for this particular card I decided that I wanted to keep it as flat as possible since I know for a fact I'm going to be mailing this. But I went ahead and just used my ATG gun and attached all of the paper pieces to the front of the card. And the cardstock is actually part of the My Favorite Things cardstock. I don't know the exact shade. This came in my sampler pack, and I'm just now trying out their cardstock. Really like it. It's all of their cardstock is 100-pound cardstock, so it's nice and heavy, and you can use it for bases of cards, which I'm really looking forward to. A lot of cardstock is flimsy and you can't really use it for that, but this particular cardstock from My Favorite Things I really like so far. But once I got everything attached as far as the paper pieces, I wanted to check it out, make sure everything looked good, and then of course just attached the image as well. And again, here I would normally use the 3D pop-ups to give it a little bit more dimension, but because I know I'm going to be mailing this card out, I decided to just use my ATG gun and attach it to the front of the card. I'm also keeping it pretty clean. I'm not doing a lot of embellishments on this card, mainly because it's a boy card, even though I'm the one sending it. I'm trying to make it not be so girly. So I went ahead and for the sentiment I'm using from Webby's Words. It's the Baby Cakes stamp set. I picked that up at CC Designs Rubber Stamps and stamped that using my VersaFine Black Onyx ink. Cut that out and decided it was just too flat, so I took my cutter bee scissors and created kind of a flag shape on the edge, and then decided that that was much better and went ahead and just attached that to the with the ATG to the front of the card. And the front's almost done. I did want to put just a couple of embellishments because, well, I'm a girl and I like them, and went ahead and found a couple of red brads in my stash. So I grabbed my We Are Memory Keepers brad setting tool, and then I'm just using one of those plastic like sewing things that I found at Michael's to line up the holes and make sure that they're straight. And with these bigger brads, I should have done this initially, but I usually use my cutter bee to punch the holes. Just because the bigger brads are so much larger, it's difficult sometimes to get them to go through with the smaller hole. So I did just re-punch those holes to make sure I could get the brads through. And then set the back of the brads. And for the most part, that is the front of the card. Like I said, I'm keeping it really simple. I'm going to take some masking tape here so I can use my ATG gun over the brads, and that will help when I go to attach it to the front of the card. And that is it. Now, the inside of the card, I am leaving a lot more simple than I normally do. I know for me personally, when I do thank you cards, I tend to write a book. So I knew I was going to have to leave plenty of white space in the front of the card. So I didn't do a lot with the front. I basically just, yeah, you'll see. Basically, I just went ahead and used the same image that I used on the front of the card, and I inked that up with the same Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and then I stamped that off on a piece of scratch paper and then stamp it in the bottom left-hand corner of the card. And now I've got plenty of room to write my big long message that I always write when I write thank you cards, and yet it still has a connection to the front of the card as well. And with that, I had one more thing that I wanted to do, add a little bit of glitter. So I took my stickles, added a little bit of sparkle to his little hat, and then also to his little onesie. And that is it. So I hope that you enjoyed it. It was so good to actually be back making cards again, and I hope you come back soon. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye.